Hello and welcome to Edupedia World. Okay, so let's first take a look at how we move around in the scene. So you can see I'm somehow able to move around, I'm able to look around, I'm able to zoom in and out and like pan around. So first of all, how am I doing this? So there are three different methods of doing this, okay? The first method is by going up here to the corner, and this tool you can just click and drag, and this will then be your pan tool, okay? I'm not even touching the keyboard and just clicking and dragging on these arrows here on the top. So you can see this is how you can pan around. The icon next to it will be your zoom, so drag up and down or left and right, and you'll be able to zoom in and out. So you can see we can pan and zoom in, and if we use the icon on the right, we're able to orbit around. So there you go. This is I don't know why you would even use this. If you only had one arm, then this would be the only option. But since most people have two arms, then I would recommend using another method. And there are two methods where you use the keyboard. So the first method is where you use the 1, 2, and 3 keys on your keyboard. So if you press 1 on the keyboard and then click and drag, then you can see you're basically doing this. You're basically panning around. If you press 2, then you're going to be able to zoom in and out. Okay, so 1, pan, 2, zoom. And you'll notice that wherever I click is where it's going to be zooming to. Okay, so if I click out here in the distance, it's going to be zooming towards the distance. Right now, if I click, it's going to be zooming in towards the center of the scene. And if I press 3, I'm able to pan around. Sorry, not pan around, to orbit around. So let me just zoom out. So I'm just using the normal left click right now, and this is a pretty easy method. This is the one I used in the beginning when I started using Cinema 4D, but I've actually started using another method, and that's the method where you, instead of using 1, 2, and 3, you instead only use one key, which is the Alt key. So right now I press and hold the Alt key, and then you can use the 3 buttons on your mouse. So the first button, just the left click. If you hold Alt and then left click and drag around, you're going to be able to basically orbit around. That's doing this. Okay, so you're able to orbit around. If you press and hold the scroll wheel, you're going to be able to pan around like this. And if you right click and then like move, you're able to zoom in and out. So you can use, there are basically 3 options. You can choose whatever you like. I'd highly recommend using either the 1, 2, and 3 method or the Alt and then the mouse, because this is really slow, and you're going to be noticing when you model, you're always going to be moving around like this. So just get comfortable moving around your scene with whatever method you like. So this was just a quick introduction to how you can move around the scene. So let's now take a look at how we can add simple objects. Okay, so we can go up into create objects and then just pick whatever you want, or we can use this menu system. So this menu system is a bit different from other menu systems. You have to click and hold, and then the menu will pop up. So as you can see here, we've got a lot of different options. You can also add splines, all this other stuff, but let's just add a simple object like a cube. And there we go, we have now added a cube. Just one quick thing to notice, if I hold Alt and then just click on the cube to orbit around, then you'll see this little cross coming up here, and that means I'm orbiting around that point, and that's because I clicked on that point. So you can see, click right here, and now I'll be orbiting around that point on the cube. That is really nice. I'm also zooming onto the cube instead of just zooming somewhere into the void. So that's a really nice feature that Cinema 4D has. So let's see, this is now our cube. As you can see, it's now deselected. It's not even selected, it's just a cube in the scene. If we were to mouse over the cube, you can see it gets highlighted, and if we click on it, it's highlighted with yellow, and we can still pan around. So what you'll see is that this gizmo has appeared, and this is basically your position controls. So we have got 3 axes because we are working in 3D. The axes are called, the red one is called X, the blue one is called C, and the green is called Y. This is different depending on what program you're using. I know 3ds Max, the C and the Y are switched around, but I think it's pretty logical the way Cinema 4D has it set up, because you know a 2D coordinate from math, you've got the X coordinate, that's what is this called, horizontal, and then the Y, that's vertical, and then C will be your depth. So I think this is very useful. The way I remember it is by just saying, okay, the red is X, and then the green must be Y because it's pointing upwards, and then blue is of course C. So you can see if we pick this red one, if you mouse over the red one and just drag, you can see we're able to move the object around on the x-axis. You can do the same on all other axes, like this. Oh, there we go. We can also use these guys. So you can see if we mouse over this one, it now highlights the blue and the red. That means I'm able to move around on this plane. So you can see I'm not moving up and down, I'm only moving like forwards and backwards and then left and right. So I'm just moving on this plane. I can do the same thing with this, and I'm able to move around, and with this guy. Okay, then we can also do other stuff. So you can see right now we are using the move tool. If we were to click on this guy over here, we've now selected the scale tool, and if we click and drag on one of these, then you'll see we're able to scale our object. So you would probably think that you're able to scale your object in just one direction, so it gets longer. But right now, because this is still a cube, we are not able to. I will explain this later, but this is a cube and not a free-form shape, so we are not able to stretch it in any way with the scale tool. If we go over here, so you can see if I select this and I press E, then that will bring up the move tool. If I press R, I'll get the rotation, and if I press T, I'll get the scale. So R, rotation, and we can now rotate this around. We can just click and rotate in any direction we want, and we can then press T, scale, do some different stuff. So this should show you guys how you can move a cube around pretty easily. Another way is going over here to the effects panel. So if you can see, we've got the we're first on the basics tab. Here we've got the name and then some layer. I'll not go into that right now. You can say if it's visible in the editor or not. If you set this to off, then you see it disappears because we are in the editor right now. Use color, blah blah blah, doesn't really matter to us right now. If we go into this coordinate tab, then that's much more interesting to us. We can see we've got the coordinates, so if I change the X one, it will move on the red axis. Oh, we can move in the Y and the C. Then this is basically like says the size in the X axis. So you can see if I change this is basically like multiplying a constant or a variable onto the width, height, or depth of the object. So you can see if I change this, I'm able to stretch the object. So if I put this to 2, that means it will have twice the width in the x-axis. I'm also able to change the rotation. So you can see it's called rotation in H, P, and B. To me, this doesn't really make any sense, like why they choose these colors. I would rather have called it like rotation around X, rotation around Y, and rotation around C, but well, that's just how it is. You can see the B is rotating around the blue axis. I don't know if that would help you remember it. If we go into the object, you can see we can now change the actual size. So this is not just scaling the object, we are actually changing the size. And as you can see, we've got a metric, the metric system, I think that's what it's called. So this is now 491 centimeters. So this is very nice to have if you're doing like interior design, or you're modeling a car where you need to know the exact dimensions. So if I were to type in 5 and then just M, that will be 5 meters, which is 500 centimeters. So you can see it knows how that's all put together. Let's try 5,000 millimeters, and it knows again that 5,000 millimeters is 500 centimeters. So as you can see now, to the right there is something called segments. So let's see what happens if we add some segments. I've now added 4 segments to each axis, and as you can see, nothing has happened. Let's try and put this back to just 1, and then instead go up, because we have to change the display, that's why we couldn't see it. So if we go up to display and then choose garage shading basically means that we got some kind of shadowish, some kind of shadows to our some kind of shaded look to our object, I should say. It's not shadows, but it looks kind of shaded. So I'll just quickly show you quick shading. Quick shading looks kind of the same, and if we go into maybe constant shading, then you can see this is pretty different. But you have got all these other options that are called garage shading with lines, quick shading with lines, constant shading with lines. I want garage shading with lines. And as you can see now, we can actually see these edges. Every time there's an edge, we're going to be able to see it as a black line. So if I pick our object and then add these segments again, then you will see what they are actually doing. So they are basically, what can we call it? They're chopping up the object in like one axis. You can see right now I've added quite a lot of segments, and that basically means that this axis we're gonna have 16 lines. So when we get into subdivision modeling and just modeling in general, then this will become very useful. Let's put these back to just 1, because this is just like one simple surface, then we don't get anything from having more segments. We can choose separate surfaces. I will not show you what that does right now. We can tick on fillet, and that's pretty self-explanatory, self-explaining what it does. It basically adds rounded corners. As you can see, it has created triangles, and when we get into subdivision modeling, you will know that triangles aren't good. but for right now we'll just let them stay. As you can see, we can change the fillet radius, and the amount of segments. Okay, so as you can see, the amount of segments basically determines how smooth the object is. So one segment will be very jagged, and then more segments will make it basically as smooth as it can get. But of course, more segments means more polygons, and in turn more memory use from your computer. So it's all a it all has to make sense in the end. Okay, so let's try and make something. What can we do? So we could try to just, I don't know, make a plane, and then you can use these small little yellow dots to actually move these around. So I just scaled up this plane, and then let's try and add a cube on top. So you can see right now I'm struggling to get this cube to stand right on this plane, because it's pretty hard to see. You can see if you are precise, you can do it pretty easily, just like this, and then be okay. This is definitely on this plane, but there are actually different views. You can see right now we are in the perspective views. In the perspective view, if you press this button here up in the right corner, or instead just press one time on the scroll wheel, you'll be able to go into this view. So you can see this is the top view, and right now we are basically looking at our scene from top. As you see, we've got the plane and then our box, and if we look here from the side, this is our side view from the right side. We've again got our plane down here, and then we've got our cube. So what we can do is that we can just zoom in, and we'll see, okay, we are a bit above. We can go into the coordinate system and then just decrease the Y until it fits. So of course this is not really necessary for what we're doing, but this is actually just for the demonstrational purpose. So you can see right now we've gotten very close, and that's more than precise enough for this purpose. So you can see we've got this box. Let's try and make it into something that looks a bit like a house. There we go, we've got our box. Let's find something that can be our roof. Let's just choose this pyramid. So as you can see, this pyramid, whenever I make an object, let's try and make a capsule, they all appear at the origin of the scene. And since we want our pyramid to be the roof of this object, it's going to be a bit problematic to move it into this position exactly. We can of course copy and paste the coordinates, but that would take some unnecessary amount of time. So since we have our house placed right here, we want to be able to take an object and then place it at the exact same position when we create it. So if we have our cube and we then just hold Alt, I think it is, hold Alt, and then make a pyramid, bam, you can see our pyramid has been put so that the pyramid has the cube as its child. Well, what that means is that if we move the pyramid around, the cube will follow. But what we can do, we can just take the cube and then just pull it out like this, and then there will be two separate objects again. So as you can see, we've got our pyramid inside the cube. We can just pull it up like this, and then start changing the size to fit our house. I think there we go. Let's try and add maybe a tree. So to make a tree, I would say use a cylinder This is a pretty, this is not perfect modeling. As you can see, it's actually pretty terrible, but it gets the job done. This is not supposed to be realistic. You can see I alt-clicked the sphere. So this is not supposed to be realistic. This would just be some cartoonish, yeah, some cartoonish 3D model. So as you can see, this is a tree. So this like the wood and the leaves up here are supposed to make up one tree. So if we were to move, we want to move this around, then we would want to move it all together. The same with the house. So we can take this sphere and this cylinder by holding Control. We can select both of them, and if we do Alt G, we're able to put them into a group or a null. So from After Effects we know that a null is just a position, and in this case a null is just a 3D point. So we've got a 3D point where we have taken these two objects and then put them into that. So if we select our null and then move that around, then the sphere and the cylinder, they will move along with it. So we can press enter and then call this tree. If we can do this another way by going up here and then creating a null, calling it, select enter, call it house, and then take the cube and the pyramid and put them inside the null that we called house. So as you can see right now, we are able to move around the house from this point, which is our null position. So as you can see, if we were to rotate, press R to rotate. If we were to rotate this null, then it will move around, it will rotate around this position here in the middle. And since it's not perfectly aligned, that may be a problem. We may want to be able to rotate around this corner, or maybe the middle of the house. So if we were to look from the top, we'd want to be able to move around, rotate around this position instead. So what we can do is that we can use this tool over here, which is the enable axis modification. So the shortcut is just pressing L, and if we press L, then we won't actually see anything different other than this little box popping up. But if we were to try and move this around, then we will see we're actually not moving the house, we're just moving this origin. So if we look from the top and try and align this, we can see that we can align this with the middle of the roof. Let's just zoom out again. And in these views I'm using the same tool, the same gestures to move around. So I'm using Alt middle button to pan around and Alt right button to zoom. So if we go in here, we can see it has for some reason been offset on the y-axis, but we can move it back into the middle of the house, and we can disable this axis modification. And if we rotate, the house will now rotate around the middle. So we can maybe say our house has to be right here, like that. And when we can take our tree, just collapse it like this, move that over here, and if we press Control and drag, we're able to duplicate. Okay, so Control, drag, and we're able to duplicate. So we can take this tree and move it into position, and then we can select all the three trees. So just Control Shift, and then again Control drag, and we can rotate, clone all these trees. Let's just take some of the trees and make them a bit shorter. And there we go, we've now got a house with 6 trees. We can add a figure. And let's say this is the guy who owns this house. There we go. And this will be his girlfriend. There we go. So this is right now we are just looking at we're currently just looking at the unrendered view. So in the next video we'll be taking a look at how we can render this to make it just a bit nicer to look at. So right now we've got just the rough 3D models that we use when we model it all, but we will then take a look at how we can render this out to get the final image. Thank you for watching Edupedia World. Stay tuned for more videos.